All right, we're going to go through this presentation and I'll talk you through all the slides. This is just a regular Google slide and I'm using my computer to do a screencast. A lot of those devices are pretty free. Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic. I have a Mac, so I'm using QuickTime. And all I have to do is have the presentation created and then talk through as I record the presentation. So what we're going to do today is talk about flexible learning environments. And this will mostly be directed towards education, but I want you to, if you are not in education, to start thinking about ways that you may be able to adapt some of these ideas into your own profession, but then also those of you that are educators, how could you adapt this environment in your own classroom? So when we think of 21st century classroom design, that's what the core of flexible learning environments is. It's really about creating learning environments that change student and teacher behavior by putting ownership over the learning process into students' hands. And the quote here says, you can't change people, but you can change their environment, and that will make the change happen. So if you think about what you do right now, whether it's in education or another profession, how can you change an environment that will actually change what people do? So is there a positioning of some sort of filing cabinet or your copy machines or something like that that may make it more efficient to do things? That's the type of thing I want you to start thinking about. So this is a book by Alan November. If you haven't read it, especially if you're an educator, this is probably one of my most valued pieces of reading that I did. It talks about preparing students for success in the digital age, and it's all about who owns the learning. Alan November argues that student ownership of learning is key, if not the key, to redesigning classrooms for 21st century learning. Alan November points out students are no longer passive consumers of technology. We can relate that back to the video we watched with Joe's non-netbook, and how we need to stop giving them passive technology, passive learning. Students today are comfortable in multi-user environments. They communicate their creativity and ideas freely. Think about all these students who want to grow up and be YouTubers, which was not a job in the past until now. And they are used to a continuum of feedback and connectivity that could not even be imagined when many of us were growing up. So students post something and they get immediate feedback. It's a way to redirect and work through things that we never had growing up. I didn't have growing up. So we're going to talk about learning zones. Learning zones, it doesn't mean you have to go and rearrange your entire classroom and buy all this furniture. What it talks about is redesigning to empower learners under the guidance of their teacher to direct their own learning and what they're doing with content and technology. So what I like about this approach is it works with what I have, a square or a rectangular classroom or an empty online course shell, which is what I was given with Canvas. And it also gives me a framework for organizing my instruction and classroom design that easily supports the integration of new ideas about learning and technology. I hope you have seen with this course that I've created that there are different ways to use technology inside this course. It's not just a course of read, respond, read, respond, read, respond. I think that's a waste of time, in my opinion. So I try not to have that in your environment here. So if you take a look at this, the Future Classrooms Lab, that's what the FCL stands for. It is a learning zone of instruction. So 1 is discussion and thinking zone, 2 is the discovery zone, 3 is the show-off zone, 4 is the repeat level zone, and then 5 is the creation zone. And if you think about it as there's an interact place, there's a presenting place, an investigation, creation, exchanging, developing, all those fit within these learning zones. This is a great article. Cult of Pedagogy is a blog. Teacher Nerds Unite. At the core of Learning Zone classrooms is flexible classroom design. So you can see that here. Think Google. If you've ever Googled the environment at Google, If you haven't, you should. They have pods, they have slides, they have silent pods, they have sleeping pods, they have all different environments that people can work in because it allows people who are learners to have choice in how they learn while setting the stage for the integration of learning activities that foster 21st century skills like creativity, innovation, communication, collaboration, problem solving. All of those things can occur in different spaces. We don't have to teach to the same model that you and I possibly grew up learning in, which were desks in a row with a teacher giving us information. That was much more directed towards the industrial age, and we are not in that age anymore. So many compare flexible classroom design to an experience at a Starbucks, where students are able to choose seating that works best for them. Move freely around the classroom, soft music may be playing, there's low lighting, and there's Wi-Fi connectivity in the classroom everywhere. Learners have a high degree of choice in their day, and there is generally a power shift from teacher to learner as learners are experiencing learning in a setting more akin to real life where decisions, communication, and problem solving are in their own hands. If you are out in the environment that is not education and you have a different job or you've worked in a different job other than education, you know this to be true. I used to sell insurance and I was able to work from home. I worked by the pool. I worked out of my car. I had a home base in my business, and that was in an office, but I rarely used it. And when I did have it, I could get up and freely move around. I could talk. I wasn't tethered to a bell that told me when I could get up and go. And there was always music playing because that's what I liked to do. So the learning zones is a model. It's a concept of flexible design, and it redefines the smaller learning spaces within the classroom and how technology is used within those smaller spaces to facilitate learning. So we're going to now dive into these a little bit more specifically. This is the gentleman. His research is all over. He's from the UK. He took the flexible classroom model to the next level and transformed his classroom into a personalized learning environment that he calls learning zones. So if we think back to last week's module, or it may have been the week before, on personalized learning, if you think about the fact that we are allowing students to do this personalized learning, you work at your own pace in this course. I don't make all of you work at the same thing at the same days because life happens. And sometimes you're all working and get it all in on a Wednesday, a Thursday, and a Friday. Sometimes you have to wait till Sunday to turn it all in. And if you give students the ability to create their own learning environments and then work at their own pace, then we have a lot more ownership of the learning. So that's what this is. Kevin's model is student-centered. There's no pre-seating arrangements. Students are free to move around and sit with whomever they wish, and students have a voice and choice in how and when they learn. So Kevin's learning zone, which is another name for his classroom, is divided into 5 mini zones. The zones are the creation zone, which creating content for use in their own learning, creating presentations to demonstrate learning, blogging, refining, editing. It happens here, and it's usually a very busy space. So the creation zone is over there, number 5 on the right-hand side, and there is a lot of technology there because they're using things like their computers, they're using iPads, they're using green screen, that sort of thing is happening here. The repeat level zone has evolved from Kevin's use of gamification, of learning, and an approach that his class enjoys. Whenever any learner requires help, advice, explanations, and is stuck, this is the area they come to repeat the learning so they can move to the next level. And usually the teacher is there or other students are there to help with that. The next level is the show-off zone. This is where the learners focus on discoveries they have made and demonstrate their learning, their understanding through writing, presentations, artwork, display, whatever medium they wish to present their work. I hope you're feeling that within this course where I'm not pigeonholing you into one way to present because we don't all like the same tools. So I try to allow different areas. Number 2 is the discovery zone. There are 2 of these, although one is cut off at the top of the image. So if you really were to see this, the discovery zone and goes across like a U over to the creation zone. These contain laptops, PCs, other technology that the learners can use to guide them on their own learning. discover answers, investigate and solve problems, collaborate on projects, and create presentations. The number one, the discussion and thinking zone. Learners can drop in whenever they wish to talk about their learning, find solutions, help each other, and just to think. It's also still the area where his class gathers, Kevin's class gathers, for a whole group focus. Whenever they are going to have a whole group instruction, he calls them all together to the discussion and thinking zone, and they know when they're there that it is a whole group lesson. So Kevin's model builds upon the flexible classroom model by incorporating technology at every zone based upon the learning goals of each student and classroom activities. Technology is available. It's used to integrate into the activities, and students are using it in the way that it works best for them. So maybe students don't want to use it to write something. So if you look at this next one, he organizes his week by creating and managing goals that he sets for students. This is that personalized learning journey, along with goals students set for themselves through the personalized journey worksheet, which he calls a PJ, personal journey. Kevin completes a PJ with each student on Monday of each week. First, Kevin adds math and ELA targets for the student. Next, each student sets their own learning goals. And, sorry, I just lost track of where I was. Come back. Oh no, hold on. I just lost my screen. This is what happens when you're in technology and working from other areas. There we go. Let me get my notes back up. There we go. First, I said that. Next, each student sets their own learning goals and next steps. Kevin and the students add and revise the PJ throughout the week based upon the students' progress and growth. Kevin organizes his learning zones so students can accomplish their PJ with a variety of technology tools and choice of activities that complement their goals and learning styles. So you can see that through here. This goes back to that idea of the flexible learning environments. There's an interact aspect. This is where the technology comes in. Teachers use interactivity to increase student participation. The key tools in this area, interactive whiteboards and one-to-one devices. They also engage with each other in this zone. So this is where you could have a direct learning instruction. And then the new buzz is open educational resources. These are resources that we are now using in education that are not costing money. You can go out, OER is the acronym for it. You can look at the OER resources through the Office of Technology, and it's really about finding information and engaging through content. And then in this area is where you can use classroom management systems like Class Dojo, that's one for younger students. Classcraft is one for older students. And this is a good way to manage students in the area. The next one is the Create Zone. Students plan and design their own. Simple repetition of information is not enough. Students work with real-world problems and socially focused activities. This is where the key tools in this area are multimedia presentation software, digital cameras, video editing software, video cameras, podcasts, animation software. Enhances students' engagement and personal responsibility for learning. They're creating the learning and then sharing it out with others. The Investigate is where students are getting together to discover answers. Key tools here, robots, microscopes, 3D models. There are a lot of online laboratories that you can use. My former school students were online and they used an online frog dissection and pig dissection, and that was a way that we could get around some of this stuff that we weren't able to do because we weren't face to face. So students are evaluating, testing ideas, and evaluating results themselves. Good problem solving. And then developing, this is like carry out work independently at their own pace. They're putting things together, self-directing themselves. This is where a lot of comfortable seating would be. Foos chairs and beanbag chairs and rocking chairs and mats on the floor. This is where students are developing their personalized learning portfolios. Students, you would have access to ebooks, audiobooks, different equipment, headphones, digital portfolios, things that students could do individually and work with headphones that they don't have to be interrupted. Next is exchange. This is where they're collaborating with each other. This is where you would have, there's this new paint that allows you to whiteboard paint surfaces, so you can paint it on walls, you can paint it on desks, on tables. You can also use interactive whiteboards, collaborative tables with projectors. This is a great way for students to exchange information. And then the present. A VLE is a learning platform, an online system that allows teachers to share educational materials with their students via the web. Examples would be some sort of LMS, Moodle, Blackboard, Canvas, which is my favorite. Have a dedicated projector and screen that students can connect right into it. Movable furniture and online publication tools like blogs, online sharing sites, virtual learning environments, all of that is a way for listeners in a zone to develop skills and critical feedback and provide constructive feedback to each other. So this is what it would look like overall. Again, this is a version of it, and this is the future classrooms. The network works to develop and showcase innovative classroom practices that mainstreams the integration of technology and mobile devices into schools. As you can see, it shares Kevin's focus on flexible learning areas where the classroom is arranged in zones, each for a different purpose. Like Kevin's model, each zone has technology available and integrated into the zone activities. We did that one. Okay. So these are just some other ways to show you how you could set it up in a classroom. This is a snapshot of a Learning Zone classroom lesson plan. As you may be able to glimpse from the screen, if you have Superman eyesight, it's a little small. Students are asked to explore a personal artifact cross-curricularly through the meaningful use of technology. The learning activities are organized to take place at different learning zones, and you can see at the top of the lesson plan it shows how long students are to spend in each zone. In this example, students will spend 5% of their time dreaming and developing an idea, 45% of their time exploring and mapping their ideas, 40% of their time making, asking questions, reflecting, and or remaking their idea, and 10% of their time showing off their idea. How do we do this? Well, there are some awesome ways to do this in the online environment. Brick and mortar teachers are able to work together, but teachers who are online are also experimenting with instructional design that moves away from linear, static, traditional course design, where one lesson follows another and another in an attempt to cover a massive amount of content with little student engagement or ownership over the learning path. This is something called Shindig, and although I have never really been able to get it to work now, it may be at the point where it's ready. But what you can see here in this video, in this screenshot, is that they're all talking about one thing, but the little pods that you see at the bottom are actually working together. So I would be the guy in the hat, and then I would be interacting with one student individually while the other students are at the bottom working together, and I can see their screens and see what they're doing. So it's a really great way to collaborate in an online space as opposed to having to be face-to-face. Ultimately, the goal of flexible learning environments is student choice. Online teachers are using things like this to redesign online learning. They're allowing student choice in how they demonstrate their learning, flipping the role of student and teacher, and using student-created video tutorials to teach math and language arts skills and strategies within courses, and introducing gamified story or scenario-based learning into the online classroom. That is really starting to take hold now. So this is an example of a course called Learning Zones that a colleague of mine and I created. Online teachers, what I find exciting about the concept of learning zones is that it can be adapted to an online classroom and course to purposefully structure learning experiences that ask students to design and actively participate in crafting their own learning experiences in both online and offline. This is an online course tree that we designed to show how to conceptualize arranging the parts of the personal artifact lesson plan that we just saw into in an online course with built-in learning zones. For example, I used the Future Classroom Lab Network Zone names and organized the different activities with each zone. So you can see the development zone, that's where you dream, the present zone, share your artifact, investigate zone, all of those things. Again, we are used to doing these things in the brick and mortar environments, and we have to start thinking outside of the box. All right, and that is it. So if you take a look, this was a presentation I had done previously, but we're going to take a look at some learning zones, how to use them in your own environment. You'll have copies of this presentation so that you can take a look at it, and then we're going to respond to how we can use learning zones.